What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you yet again. This is the Better Off Dead NFL Week 5 edition. I think it's Week 5, right? Thanks for all you joined for the college football video. I'm hoping to go 3-0 here, man. I got this Cal game on, which I guess this is actually the college game day game. I don't know when college game day shows up at a 10 p.m. my time game, but that's the case. It's midnight, and this game's not even at halftime yet, I don't think. Cal's up 21-10, I believe, so let's keep it going, man. Just cover the spread. Please don't blow this. I want the 3-0 day. I got Southern Miss right. They covered. They did not win outright, but I'll take the cover, obviously. I put most of the bet on the cover. Only put 1% of the bet on the money line there, and what was the other game? Oh, Georgia Tech. That got a little dicey, but they covered. They won and covered. I'll take it. And we can forget about that baseball game, man, because it was just over right away, man. Detroit allows 5 runs in the first inning. Just forget about it. They only allowed 2 runs in the rest of the game. They didn't score anything. I expected them to score at least a few runs there and expected the bullpen game to hold better than it did. It would have been a lot better if they didn't allow a bunch of runs in the first inning, but that is what it is. And San Diego Padres, I just had on a little while ago, and they blew their game. They're up 3-0 in the first inning and completely imploded. It is not looking good for the Padres either, even though I was talking about how Joe Musgrove is out for the remainder of the postseason. I think the Dodgers are down 2 starting pitchers. They're down Clayton Kershaw and Tyler Glasnow, I think. I don't think either of them are coming back, so it's a crazy situation on both sides there. Rootless Redneck, thanks for joining, man. What's up? We're about to talk NFL. This is not going to go an hour and 45 minutes like the college show did, but I think it was worth it, man. If I got some good information out there. I don't know how my leans did or my semi-picks, my analysis on a bunch of those other games went, but I'm paying attention to my bets, and they're looking pretty good. Hopefully we sweep the 3-0 there. I want the winning day. It'll be nice. Even if Cal loses, I think I will wind up with a slight winning day because the Detroit one was an underdog price, but it won't be anywhere near as good. So let's get the 3-0. Let's talk about NFL, man. I got 3 plays in the NFL, even though this is the first bye week. So I think we actually have 4 teams on bye this week. ESPN actually tells you. Detroit, Tennessee, Philadelphia, and the Chargers are all on bye. All right. So that means we have fewer games to choose from, but there are 3 games. I think this week was actually easy for me, to be honest. And I said I hated the college card, and I'm looking pretty good on the college bets there. And then NFL, I'm saying I really like this card. 3 games just completely jump out at me, and the other ones I'm just like, no, whatever. So it's I don't know, man. Maybe that's a bad sign, but hopefully it's not. This NFL card just seems so easy for me to just, these are the 3 strongest plays, and it's not even close, in my opinion. But let's get into it. I'll talk about a few of the other games first. Usually I talk about all the kind of one-off primetime games. I have a play in the London game, which is usually not the case. So there is a London game. The London games are starting this week, which I'll talk about that. Maybe I'll just talk about it now, and then I'll start talking about some of the other ones. Because I always talk about those one-off games, the games that are in their own time slot and the primetime games and stuff. Let's just jump right into it. New York Jets plus 2.5 is going to be the play in that one. It's getting ugly right off the bat, man. I like the play on the Jets here, or rather, I don't like the spot from Minnesota. And the one thing that you really have to kind of gauge here, sort of, is the London, the fact that it's in London, is that going to affect either team more negatively than the other team? And in this one, I don't really think so, because I don't know that either of these teams are really necessarily used to going over there. So I think it's kind of just a wash as far as, both of these teams have to travel out to London. This one is actually not in Wembley Stadium. I know the NFL usually has London games in Wembley, and that's how it started out, but now they have them in different venues. There are some in Wembley. This one is at Tottenham Hotspur's stadium. They're another one of the London area soccer teams. The London football teams, the footy on the pitch out there. So that's where this one is played. I don't think it really matters which stadium it's in, really, to be honest. And then there are going to be some Berlin games, I think, as well, if I remember correctly, at least one. I don't know when, but this week they are starting. I'm taking the Jets. I did want to look into because I do have some sources that may know when these teams actually got out to London, but I didn't look, and I'm still just playing the Jets in this one. I did not figure out which of the teams got there earlier, because usually if one of the teams goes over there earlier in the week, it makes more sense. And like, I remember the Giants, I think, were one of the teams that did that. They would go out there earlier in the week because they wanted to adjust to the time zone difference and have as much time as possible to adjust to it. So get out there right away and just do your full week of practicing out there, because there are practice facilities over there across the pond. I don't know if that's the case with either of these teams, but in this one, I don't know that it matters. I'm going on this anyway. Rootless. Fuck England. Yeah, I mean, football is not taking off over there, and they still continue doing it, man. And I remember there was talk about, we're going to, like, give London the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's like, is that who they really want? Do they want Trevor Lawrence, who looks like his collarbone just is permanently broken and the Jaguars can't win a single game? Is that what they want over there? I don't know. It's not looking good. All right. So, this is basically the way that I look at this is you're getting value, I think, at this point on the New York Jets. I mean, this line is kind of telling you that Minnesota is the better team by almost a field goal, and I just don't think that that's the case. I think these teams are probably pretty evenly matched here, so I think the fact that you're getting the Jets at plus 2.5, I think, is a little bit of value here. I don't know that it's going to go up any further than that, but looking at the market, I mean, the Vikings are up from – they actually flipped the favorite from plus 1.5 up to minus 2.5, but honestly, I don't know when it was plus 1.5. That could have been like an earlier line, because I don't really see – this does not look like it was legitimate like line movement throughout the week, because you also see Vikings have 67% of the tickets, but 55% of the cash is on the other side on the Jets. So I do think this is a pros versus Joes situation here that you see in the NFL. I can usually find those by reading these percentages on the board here. It looks like it to me, and this one I don't really expect it to change. Hopefully I'm right about that, but hopefully I win the game regardless. Hopefully I win the bet here, but it looks like the ticket percentage coming in on the Vikings side, because they haven't done anything wrong. So, like, why would the public not be on the Vikings here? Whereas the Jets have looked pretty ugly, even though Aaron Rodgers is back. The public remembers what they just saw, too, and the Jets did not look good recently. So that's the situation there. Public really can only be coming in on the Vikings here, I'd imagine. And the line almost looks like it's begging you to take the Vikings in this one, to be honest. It looks too easy to, like, take the Vikings at a price where it's basically just you're picking the winner here. So I obviously don't agree with it. I'm taking the Jets. The cash percentage appears to be on the Jets, so it looks like there are some bigger bets that are actually agreeing with me on this one. The Vikings, they're in a sandwich spot, man. I mean, yes, I know they're 4-0. Everybody's hailing Sam Darnold as the new king of the NFL or whatever, the king of Minnesota. You look at his stats, I mean, he's been good. I know he has 11 touchdown passes, which is really ridiculous, but really it's been like a team effort out of Minnesota. Like, Darnold is doing well, but he's not putting up like gigantic like passing yard stats or anything like that. He did not have a 500-yard game like Kirk Cousins did. Sam Darnold doesn't even have a 300-yard passing game. All of his 4 starts have been below 300 yards, and I think at least one of them was below 200 yards, but they're still getting it done. I mean, the team's playing well as a team. They're playing good defense. They got Justin Jefferson. They got Jordan Addison. They got a lot of weapons to surround Sam Darnold. They're well coached. Kevin O'Connell, is that his name, the coach there? Very, very tall man, Kevin O'Connell. He's a very good regular season coach, and beyond that, I'm not very sure, but I think this is a spot where I think the Vikings, this is a spot that looks like they could slip up here, man. I mean, they're coming off what may be their biggest win of the season so far, even though, yes, I know beating the 49ers is big, but that was a home game for the Vikings, and which does mean maybe they'll celebrate a little bit more, but the 49ers also kind of have a lot of injury problems right now. Christian McCaffrey didn't play in that game, so I don't know if they're going to consider that game to be bigger, especially they seem to beat the 49ers every time they come into Minnesota, and they did it last year too, so I don't know about that, whereas beating the Green Bay Packers on the road with Jordan Love back, I think that's a much bigger deal. That's a huge win, big divisional game, and that's basically the Vikings' biggest rival there, the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love had just come back, though, so I will say maybe take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because when you have that star quarterback come back, I always talk about it. I didn't even think he was going to play in that game when I did this show last week. I was saying I didn't think Love was actually going to come back, but he did. And that makes it the reverse injured player theory, man. So when the team, the Packers, they actually were winning without Jordan Love. It's actually hilarious. The Packers are 2-2, and they're 0-2 in Jordan Love's games. But granted, they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings. So their two best opponents were in those two games. But the Packers are 2-0 with Malik Willis as quarterback because they beat, who did they even beat? I don't even remember. Some not good teams. They beat Tennessee, and I forget who else they beat. But, yeah, it's just kind of hilarious that that's the way it's worked out so far. But either way, I think the Packers, because they were winning without Jordan Love, I think maybe they got a little bit complacent, even though, yeah, it's a big game against the Minnesota Vikings. But I think maybe some complacency was in effect there, but maybe also it was just that Jordan Love had to kind of ramp it back up, and the team had to, like, regain their chemistry with Jordan Love, because that's still like a shakeup of the roster when the star quarterback comes back in and you have to kind of get used to him again. So I think that's probably kind of what was going on in this game. And Green Bay actually outgained Minnesota in this game by almost 100 yards. You can see Green Bay had 4 turnovers in the game. Minnesota had 3, so there were a lot of turnovers in this game. But Green Bay actually out-yarded Minnesota in the game and didn't win. I mean, Minnesota was winning the game 28-0, and then they really did kind of poorly after that. That means after that point, Green Bay outscored them 29-3 in the remainder of the game. So that's also not a great sign for Minnesota. But either way, man, Minnesota's coming off a big win there. And who do they have up next? Even though, well, they have a bye up next, yeah. So they do have a break after this. So maybe they'll even be looking forward to a bye, man, because I don't know, man. After you get that huge win, you have the huge high, beating Green Bay. Now you have to go out to London and play the Jets, who just don't look very good yet again, even though I know it is Aaron Rodgers back. Really? Are they going to really pay attention that much? Or are they going to be kind of looking ahead to the bye at this point because they kind of want that break, they want that rest, and then up after that they have their other biggest divisional foe, the Detroit Lions, who are really their biggest competition right now to win the division. Although Green Bay is also a pretty big competitor as well there. So this is a sandwich spot for the Vikings, man. They're playing an out-of-conference game sandwiched in between two of their biggest division rivals. I think this is a bad spot, and they have to go out to London to do it. So, yeah, I don't like it. The total's pretty low, too, at 40.5, so it does mean that taking the points is worth a little bit more there as well if you're going to jump in on the underdog side there with a low total. The points always mean more. Another way that you could look at this, even though I like the Jets side, I'm just going to play it straight up. I'm going to play the Jets. I do think the Jets will win this game, but another way that you could look to play this is to hook the Jets into a teaser. In this one, this is a good teaser situation. I talk about teasers a lot. Maybe I'll just mention it once per show, basically, at this point. With the teaser, what you want to do in the NFL, the only way that the teaser has value is you want to play a 2-team 6-point teaser. And the way that you do it is you want to go through all the key numbers in football, 3, 4, and 7, and that's the way you get the value out of it. But you want to not pay more than minus 120, really, to do it. And what you want to do is you want to find an underdog that's between 1.5 and 2.5. You want 2 of those, or you want either one of those underdogs and one team that's between 7.5 and 8.5. You want 2 teams that are in either of those situations, is what I mean, where you can take either team either up from below 3 to up above 7 as an underdog, or you can take a team that's up above 7 as a favorite down to basically just winning the game to below 3. So that's the way the teaser works. So the Jets, they're a perfect teaser candidate because I think that they're a good side in this game anyway. But you could tease, they're at 2.5 right now, and you could tease them up to 8.5. So then they only have to cover the 8.5, but of course you need the other leg of that teaser to also hit. And maybe I'll mention another team that you could tie into that exact same teaser with one of my other plays. Even though I'm playing them straight up, I am playing another underdog that's right in that same price range there. So just another little added tidbit there. That's the Stanford Wong teasers there. What's up, Nate? What's going on, man? Fucked up day. 5 of the top 11 went down. I know Alabama lost, which is crazy. Alabama, I mean, they were in a that's like a really typical letdown spot that Alabama was in, as I mentioned, off of that huge Georgia win, but I just didn't trust Vandy, even though they were coming out of a bye, so I preferred the Vandy side slightly, but I didn't really want to do it because Vandy played a really tough game against Mizzou as well, but Yeah, it came down to, I think, Vandy coming out of the bye. I think that absolutely helped. And I think Alabama did overlook Vandy. And Alabama was in the bigger bad spot, the worst spot, the big letdown spot. So I think that's what happened there. Indiana cashed. I did not expect that. I leaned in the other direction in that one. But Northwestern is really just horrendous. They can't score. Case Keenum 2.0, baby. Dude, I want to bet on the Case Keenum. What was the pass was to Stephon Diggs, right? That playoff game against New Orleans. I was actually on a plane headed down to Florida when that game ended. I was watching the game on the plane. You guys remember that game, right? It was a playoff game. Minnesota. I had Minnesota money line in that game at minus 200, and I thought that was actually a small price for Minnesota. And Minnesota was winning that whole game by like double digits or whatever, and then blew the whole thing. I think Drew Brees was still there for New Orleans, and they came all the way back, took the lead, and then it came down to that final play. That was Case Keenum, right? He made that final throw, the huge touchdown pass to Diggs, and everybody's like telling me that I got lucky on it. But what, really? Or was it really that I got unlucky and had a bad beat at that point if that hadn't happened? Because Minnesota dominated most of that game. So, yeah, Packers, yeah, definitely a quality win there. Did Green Bay miss field goals? I didn't see how that game ended. So Green Bay could have actually won that game, huh? Yeah, Minnesota, I mean, I don't think it's a great sign, really, if they can implode after having a giant lead like that. But either way, I like the Jets side in this one. And then on the other side of this, the New York Jets, I mean, I think they're in a bounce-back spot. This was a horrendous performance out of the Jets against the Denver Broncos, at least offensively. But I think they still should have won that game at the very least. But they're coming off such an ugly game. That means you're probably going to get value on the Jets because they looked horrible last week. Losing as a big home favorite to a rookie quarterback in the Denver Broncos. Although Bo Nix has now won 2 straight games as a pretty big underdog. One of them I had money on against Tampa Bay. But either way you look at it, I think it just looks really, really ugly when you score 9 points against anybody, okay? So the public's not going to want that at all. They're going to want this Vikings team that scored over 30 and just beat the Green Bay Packers. I mean, this Broncos loss here, it doesn't get uglier than that. But prior to that, the Jets hadn't really done anything wrong. I mean, I think you can give them a pass losing to the 49ers, trying to get Aaron Rodgers back up to speed. But then, of course, they played 2 bad teams in Tennessee and the Patriots. But they did what they were supposed to do, and they beat both of them. So there is at least that. I expected the Jets to win against the Broncos last week, and they probably should have. I mean, at the very least, the Jets' defense was really, really good again in that game. Denver's offense did nothing. I mean, they're held to 186 yards, very few yards there. The Jets outgained them, but the Jets didn't do well offensively. So the Jets should have done better offensively. But if you were watching that game, the Jets, I think, had multiple chances to win that game. They were up 6-0 early. They were up 9-7 in the fourth quarter. And I know they had at least one field goal attempt near the end, although it was a long field goal in bad weather. Greg the leg. Maybe he's too old at this point, man. He's Greg the peg leg now. I don't know. But he missed, I think, a 50-yard field goal at the end. But still, he's a good kicker, man. So even though he's pretty old, that's still a pretty makeable field goal. And in better weather, maybe he would have made it. I think he had the distance on it, if I remember correctly, and it was wide right. And I was not happy about it. I mean, I thought the Jets were going to win that game, but I didn't have any money on it. The Jets were not on the verge of covering that game at the very least. So, but I don't know. Take away from that what you will. But the Jets looked really ugly, so you know me, I'm going to play on the team that looked ugly versus the team that looked really good, especially when Minnesota's in that horrific sandwich spot. And like I said, it just looks too easy to take the 4-0 Vikings, who have looked really good so far, against a New York Jets team that has looked fairly ugly so far this season. So that's the first play there. That is on that London game there, the New York Jets plus 2.5. I'll talk about some of these other games before I get into my other plays, I guess. One of my plays is in the 1 p.m. slate, and one is in the 4 p.m. slate Eastern. So I don't have a play on either of the primetime games, but I always do talk about them, so I will talk about them. I'll talk about a couple of these other games, I guess, real quick. One of the biggest games on the board is Bills-Texans, but this is a really hard one for me to read. I don't have a play on this, obviously. I probably lean to the Bills if you put a gun to my head, but I think both of these teams kind of have reason to be in a little bit of a bounce-back spot. And the Bills are public, kind of, with 62% of the tickets, but looks like they have 74% of the cash on them. So it does look like, for the time being, at least, the cash discrepancy is on the Bills side. And to me, this market looks like it is indicating on the Bills side. The Texans have flipped from a 1-point dog to a 1-point favorite in this one, which I don't think that's really a significant move because it's still just in that price range right around pick'em, where it's like pick the winner basically. And you never see a pick'em line in the NFL, really. Like, if it moves off of a 1, it's moving to the 1 on the other side, really. Like, the odds makers always skip 0 in the NFL. You've seen it happen with the Dolphins, too, by the way. And I have no read on Dolphins-Patriots at all, but I'm just pointing out the Dolphins flipped to a 1-point favorite there, and they have 66% of the cash on them, whereas 64% of the tickets are on the Patriots. So it does look like that's a pros versus Joe scenario, with the line also moving with where the cash is on Miami. So take from that what you will. I guess I'll just mention that game real quick because I'm talking about it. Miami, I mean, they're on a shorter week because they're coming off a Monday night game, and the Patriots playing on Sunday. The Patriots got blasted by San Francisco, but the Patriots are having to travel a lot. So the Patriots had to travel out to the West Coast. They lost badly to San Francisco. Now they're having to travel back east. So the travel spot probably isn't as good for the Patriots, even though Miami had to play on Monday. Patriots having to go coast to coast twice over the course of 2 weeks. Probably not the greatest spot there. Miami just looks so bad on primetime, losing horribly to the Tennessee Titans. I mean, I think even though the Patriots didn't look good and they pretty much got killed by San Francisco, the public bettors are going to come in and they always look at basically what happened last week, and they don't look much further than that. They have ADD. They're going to think the Dolphins' loss was way worse, obviously, because losing to Tennessee really badly is way more of an indictment than losing to the 49ers. And the Dolphins have looked like they can't do anything. So I think that is basically why the public is coming in on the Patriots. As it stands right now, obviously, I'm not touching this game. This is a disaster of a game, but I would lean to the Dolphins, as ugly as it sounds. It just seems so ugly to take the Dolphins. You wouldn't expect the Patriots to be public against anybody, really, at this point in the NFL, but against this Miami team, they actually are. The Tua-less Miami team, with, it seems like Tyreek Hill wants out of there, and there's kind of a lot of turmoil seemingly going on there, but the market's still indicating on Miami, and I kind of agree with it, gun to my head, but I'm not touching that. That total's down to 35. That's looking like it's going to be one of the ugliest games of the season. Yeah, I pray for the people who are subjecting themselves to actually watching that game. Bills-Texans should be a good game, though. I mean, it's got a high total. Back to this game. Texans, like I said, have flipped to a 1-point favorite, but the market kind of looks like it's indicating on the Bills as far as the percentage is concerned. I kind of prefer the Bills side in this one just because, just like Miami, kind of the Bills lost in a more public fashion. The Bills got crushed in primetime by the Ravens last week. I talked about that game on my show last week. I leaned to the Ravens. I got the pick right in my pools, but I did not expect the Ravens to blow them out in that fashion. But now that that happened, I kind of think it's a bounce-back spot for Buffalo, even though they are playing a second straight road game, which is actually a stretch of 3 road games in a row. Kind of a difficult situation there, and I think their next game is actually another Monday night. That's a Monday night game against the Jets, actually, for Buffalo next week. But are they really going to be looking ahead to the Jets? Probably not, especially when they just got their asses handed to them on primetime. I expect the Bills to kind of be in a bounce-back mode here. Houston, I mean, that offense of Houston's has not been showing up as much this year, man. With C.J. Stroud, I mean, everybody, I think, kind of perceives that Houston offense to still be really, really good like it was last year, where they were just lighting it up. But I think that offense is kind of one-dimensional, man. I don't think they have a very good rushing attack in Houston. It's all passing, and it looks like they're kind of taking a step back this year, which isn't good for me because I have C.J. Stroud in fantasy, although he's been fine enough to get me to 3-1 on that in my main league there. And I do have Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs as well, so help me, please. But Buffalo, I mean, I think Buffalo, this is actually, honestly, I like the under in this game more than the side if I was going to play anything, because I think both of these teams are deceptively good on defense. I mean, people look at this and think, oh, it's Josh Allen versus C.J. Stroud. This is going to be a huge quarterback battle, right, with a lot of offense. I kind of think that maybe it won't be, because the Texans' defense has actually been surprisingly good this year, and Buffalo, their defense is actually not bad as well, and they do have some injuries again on that defense, but I think it's less injured than it was by the time they exited the playoffs last year. They were just in shambles by the time they lost to Kansas City there. But Buffalo, I mean, I lean to their side because I think they're in the bounce-back spot there. Texans, are coming off a scare against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home, but I think Buffalo is probably in the better spot to refocus because Houston, yeah, I mean, it was a scare, but Buffalo, I mean, they got blasted so badly in prime time that I think that's going to serve to refocus you a little bit more than almost losing to the Jaguars. And I guess Horton, the Texans' defensive end, has now been reactivated and has been deemed to be cancer-free. So maybe Houston will step their game up a little bit for that reason because they'll be excited for that. I don't know. So congratulations to him, though. That's a good situation there. But I do lean to the Bills side, but I like the under better. Like I said, I think you're probably getting a little bit of value there. It looks like it's gone down a little bit, or no, it's gone up actually from 47 to 47.5, but with juice on the under, so not really a huge move at all. Heavily public on the over. Like I said, the public's only going to come in on an over in a game with two star quarterbacks like this. 93% of the tickets and 98% of the cash looks like it's also on the over. I don't agree with it, like I said. I mean, the perception, I think, is that both of these teams are still high scoring, and I think these teams are both going to show up just because it's one of those games where it's a battle of two potential playoff teams this year. So I think the teams are going to show up and kind of start out a little bit close to the vest, not wanting to make mistakes, and it might be that type of game. It might turn into kind of that, when you get two good teams like that, man, that might meet up in the playoffs as well, you kind of get that like heavyweight fight aspect to it. So I do kind of expect that to be the situation there. So I like the under in that one. I did not take the Jets banner off the screen, or did I? No, I guess I did. Never mind. I put it back up. Oh. Hard to read the Bills. Yeah, I mean, they've beaten the shit out of the Sisters of the Poor. Yeah, the Bills, they definitely beat bad teams. They lost to the Ravens, but I think that was a better spot for the Ravens in that one. The Ravens are also a really good team, so I'm not going to indict the Bills for that. And the Bills had like absolutely crushed a couple of opponents. And remember, when they beat Miami still at least had Tua for most of that game, and it was on the road, and the Bills were way ahead in that game. But as I've also pointed out on the show over the last couple of weeks, Miami did also outgain them quite a bit in that game. So you're right, it is hard to read the Bills, and the Bills have lost their top two wide receivers, as I've also mentioned on the show quite a bit. Diggs, as I mentioned, is now on Houston. So this is going to be the Diggs Bowl as well. I forgot about that. So that's interesting. So on the one hand, the Bills defense, they know Diggs' tendencies, right? So they know how to shut him down. Although it's not as much as like if you have a defense that knows how to shut down the opposing quarterback. Like one wide receiver doesn't matter as much, but still, the Bills kind of know how Diggs plays. Whereas Diggs might also kind of want to step up his game against the team that he used to play for, the Bills. So who knows? But that's a little bit of an interesting little addition to that game there, that it's the Stephon Diggs Bowl there. But Diggs and Gabe Davis both are gone from the Bills. The Bills have kind of switched over to being a more run-heavy offense, but it has worked for them so far this season. Bills have good coaching, man, and they have a good quarterback, so they're still a good team. They're still one of the better teams in the AFC, I think, for sure, unless we see that something tells us differently, which I haven't been told differently yet. You want Diggs and Allen to fight? I don't think that's going to happen. It would be pretty bizarre. It would be crazy, man. I expect them to shake hands and hug, pretty much. I expect it to be kind of a little bit of a gay fest there. They don't hate each other, right? I don't think they do. Let me see. And they won't be on the field at the same time because they're both offensive players, right? So they'll only be on the field at the same time before and after the game, where I expect that they will shake hands and hug, like I said. A couple of my leans that I have here, I lean to the Cleveland Browns. I mean, Washington football team, man. The Washington Redskins are sitting here at 3, but it's gone down from 3 with heavy juice down to a 3 at even money. So it looks like the line might actually drop to below the 3. And if it does that, if it goes from close to 3.5 all the way down to like 2.5, that's a pretty significant move through the key number of 3. With Washington being public with 72% of the tickets and only 65% of the cash, I bet we didn't expect this, right? The Washington Redskins are a public home favorite now? Whoa, that's kind of weird. But Washington, I just think they look too good at this point, man. They've looked way too good 2 weeks in a row. I faded them last week, and I got caught because I thought that was like Jaden Daniels coming out party against the Bengals, and everybody saw him on primetime, and I was like, he's not going to like repeat that again, even though I think he is definitely good. But I was a little bit wrong where he did have kind of a repeat performance. Not quite as good, but also still really good against the Cardinals. That looked like a difficult spot to me, man. A second straight road game coming off like a marquee win in prime time on a Monday night and on a short week. I thought it was a bad spot for Washington. Arizona had a 7-0 lead in that game, and then I don't know what happened there. I don't know how Arizona completely no-showed after that, but it was just Washington dominated them. I mean, there's no other way to look at that game, really. I don't know what happened there because Washington, they still don't have a good defense, dude. I don't know why Arizona didn't take advantage of that, but Arizona, at least on that first possession, I had it on up here. It was on red zone, and Arizona just marched down the field effortlessly for that first touchdown. Then I have no idea what happened after that. No clue. But I think Washington's defense is still not very good. Their offense is obviously good, and now the public is actually on to Washington. Now, it's the Jaden Daniels party now, man. Everybody loves what he's done the last 2 weeks. Washington looks like one of the best offenses in the NFL. I always say, man, don't overreact in the NFL. It's the sport where people have the most tendency to overreact. I'm saying hold your horses a little bit, all right? I mean, Washington, yeah, they've looked really good over the last 2 weeks, but Arizona's defense sucks, and the Bengals' defense has actually sucked this year as well. So they've done that against two questionable defenses, to say the least. Like the Bengals, I know we kind of perceive them as having a pretty good defense, but I don't think they do this year, man. It has not looked good so far this year. So I think we're going to have to see what Washington is made of this week against the Cleveland Browns, who do actually have a good defense. This is going to be the best of those defenses that they've run into over the last few weeks. And I think probably the best defense they've faced this year, because I don't know if Tampa's is that good either, really. Tampa's got a lot of injuries going on in that defense. Giants, I mean, no, not really. I mean, I don't think the Giants are very good on either side of the ball. So Washington, I think this is going to be the best defense they've faced so far. And, of course, the public prefers offense over defense typically, and I prefer the opposite. So when you have a situation like this with a really hot offense that just looks unstoppable right now, up against a team that really has not had a good offense, Deshaun Watson really struggling, a team that has not scored a whole lot, but Cleveland, they've been pretty good defensively, man. Even though their offense has been terrible, I mean, they have not allowed more than 21 points in any of the last 3 weeks. Granted, it was against some not great offenses in Jacksonville, the Giants, and the Raiders. So this will be the best offense they've faced since the Dallas Cowboys in week 1. But still, Cleveland, better defense, and they're coming off a couple ugly losses in a row, man, losing to the Giants and then to the Raiders, and they were beating the Raiders 10-0 to start out that game. I don't know, man, even though, yes, this is a second straight road game, and yes, they are having to come back from the West Coast to the East Coast, I still prefer Cleveland in this one just because Washington's just look way too good. It's not going to be a play for me, but you're fading the public by taking the Browns, which I like. It looks like less of the cash, less of the cash than the tickets are on the Commanders, the football team, the Redskins there. And the line looks like it is moving in Cleveland's direction as well. So better defense, getting points as an underdog. I'm going to look that way, and that is the way that I look in that one with the Browns. As ugly as it looks, you got to play ugly teams in the NFL, man. There's no way around it. My plays are ugly this week as well. Good coach and good quarterback. Yeah, I mean, I don't know which coach and QB you're talking about in this case, but Jaden Daniels, I mean, I think he is good. He's the best of the rookie class, although we still have to see what happens the rest of the season. And I forget, who's Washington's coach now? Is it Dan Quinn? I forget who they have there. Yeah, the Redskins. I think it is Dan Quinn now, right? Is that who they have there? Yeah, he is good. I forget, where was he at before? He was at Atlanta before, I think, and I think he was in a coordinator role at some points as well. He's pretty good, and Washington also has Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator now, and he totally failed miserably as a head coach with Arizona, although granted Arizona had a lot of injury problems when he was there as well, but Cliff Kingsbury, I think, is really good in the OC role, and he's not good as a head coach. I think that's just the way that it is. And he looked like an offensive genius when he was at Texas Tech back in the day. So pretty good coaching changes there for Washington as well. Dan Quinn was the Cowboys DC. Yeah. Well, I mean, if he's a defensive coach, it's not working out very well so far for Washington. All right. I mean, I don't think their defense is very good at all. So I'm going to expect Cleveland's offense to actually be able to score a little bit against Washington's not very good defense there. Daniels outpacing 2007 Brady in completion percentage. I don't think it's going to continue, man. Especially 2007 was during that stretch of time where it was like a complete quarterback league, and quarterbacks were just playing completely out of their minds. Since, I think, 2021 or so, the quarterback statistics in the NFL have actually declined a lot. And I think it's because defenses are changing their schemes to kind of adapt to what the quarterbacks were doing for that stretch of time. So I don't think we're going to see like that late 2000s Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning. I don't think we're going to see those numbers again. Daniels has done it for a couple of games in a row, but I think he's going to have to regress a little bit, even though, yes, I do think he'll continue to be good, but I think the regression is going to start happening this week. Browns need to let Jameis cook. All right, Jameis Winston, is he there? I don't even know. Did they put him in last week? I forgot about Jameis Winston. Famous Jameis. I was like, who's Jamie's? Jamie's is a restaurant around here, by the way, kind of a family restaurant. Yeah, I mean, if I were them, if they have Jameis Winston, I would put him in, even though I think Deshaun Watson is good, but I don't know what's going on with him, man. I think Deshaun Watson needs to start getting the happy endings again or something. I think that'll help him out. But I do lean to that side. Raiders-Broncos, I'll just point out because I think it's just kind of a weird situation. Broncos are up from 1.5 to 3 now. A spot where the Broncos with Bo Nix are favored by 3. I mean, okay. I mean, Bo Nix, yeah, I mean, I know the Broncos have won 2 games, both as underdogs, both on the road at Tampa and at the Jets. But Bo Nix, I mean, he got totally shut down by the Jets. He hasn't exactly been lighting it up. I mean, he's not Jaden Daniels by any stretch. He's probably better than Caleb Williams, though, but that's not saying much. Broncos have 61% of the tickets on them, but only 60% of the cash, and the line's up to 3. I might lean to taking the points here, and you got a low total down to 35.5 too. With, I mean, it's just like where's the offense even going to come from in this game? There, you got Bo Nix and a pretty offensively challenged Broncos team, and a Raiders team with just a lot of injury problems and stuff. And I think Devontae Adams is injured, and it looks like he's probably out of there. It looks like he's probably going to wind up getting traded or whatever the case may be. I don't know what's going on there, but it looks like he's probably gone from the Raiders. I do think the Raiders have defensive injuries as well. I think Max Crosby might be out in this game too, but I don't know if it's going to matter that much as far as slowing down this not very impressive Broncos offense. So it looks like it is going to be an ugly, low-scoring game. This game and the Dolphins-Patriots, I'm talking about both of the ugliest 2 games on the board here, man. My apologies. But in this game, I do think that the Raiders might actually be the side to look at in this game because the Broncos are returning from 2 straight games on the East Coast on the road, and they pulled off 2 straight upsets in those games. And the Jets are a physical defense, man. So when you come off of playing the Jets, I think that's a difficult spot as well, just because the Jets beat you up physically. So even though, yes, I know the Raiders played Cleveland, who was also a physical defense, but Jets, I think, are pretty murderous on defense, and plus the travel spot, having to come back there. I think it's a little bit worse of a spot for Denver. I think they could be in a letdown off of 2 big upset wins there, and off of those wins, they look good enough that they're getting the public action in the market, it looks like. So there is at least that, whereas the public wants nothing to do with the Raiders, even though the Raiders, I mean, whatever, they beat Cleveland last week. They came back and beat Cleveland. I mean, they haven't been terrible, really, this year, although losing to the Panthers, kind of an indictment, but Andy Dalton came into that one, and the Panthers looked like a completely different team, so I don't know. The Chargers aren't really that bad either, and they beat the Ravens, who we know are also really good. So Raiders have not had an easy schedule, at the very least. So, I mean, my lean would be to the Raiders in that one, but, I mean, that's not going to be a play for me at all. We'll talk about these primetime games. Before I talk about the other 2 plays that I have, Cowboys-Steelers. This is really an interesting matchup, actually, on Sunday night that I think is going to be a real conflict of styles here, where you have the offensive oriented Cowboys against the defensive oriented Steelers here. And you know me, man, I like defense, even though the Steelers are actually the favorite in this game. I actually lean to the Steelers, but the line has moved a little bit, so you're not getting as good of a price as you could have on the Steelers. Cowboys are one of those dreaded public underdogs, man. So this is one of those games where it's a close line and public's going to come in and they don't like defense. They don't like teams that have ugly offense like the Steelers do. They like offense. They like Dak. Like, they're going to look at this and be like, wait a minute, what is this, Dak against Justin Fields? Yeah, you know which way the public is going to go in that game. They're going to be on Dak. They're going to be on the Cowboys, the more impressive offense, the team that can score, because they're going to look at this and think the Steelers can't score at all. How could I possibly lay a favorite price with the Steelers, right? So the public coming in 57% of the tickets, at least on the Cowboys, but only 52% of the cash. So Cowboys, again, they look like one of those public underdogs there, which not heavily public, but still a public underdog, which they're usually, as I mentioned, there usually aren't very many of those. And it looks like the cash percentage is less so on the Cowboys. And the Steelers have moved up from a pick'em to a 2.5-point favorite with juice. So it's actually getting close to the Steelers being a 3-point favorite in that game. I would not want to lay 3 with the Steelers, man, when you could have gotten a better price than that. The Steelers I was considering making a play on this week. They were one of the plays that just missed making my card this week. I considered playing the Steelers just because I like kind of the way the matchup sets up for them, and I like defense, as you know, but I prefer to take points with defense. I'd much prefer that the Steelers were the underdog, obviously, and the line has kind of passed us by a little bit. If you can still lay 2.5, and it's kind of like it's still like a pick the winner scenario there, I still don't mind that. If you want to lay 2.5 with the Steelers, you could look to lay a money line. You might be able to find a money line in like the minus 140 range on the Steelers. I don't mind that either. The situation that we have going on here is Dallas. I mean, Dallas is on extra rest because they played on Thursday night and they beat the Giants. But, I mean, that was still kind of a big divisional win for Dallas at the very least. I don't know how big it really is, though, because they beat the Giants every single time. So maybe they don't care that much about it. But still, they won in primetime, and it was a bit closer than maybe we thought it was going to be. I lost a pick in my pick'em pools on Giants plus 4.5, by the way, because ESPN gave us the 4.5 before the line had moved to 5.5. So thanks a lot, ESPN. Dallas, I mean, didn't play exactly the best game there, but still, again, it's kind of a big primetime win. And up next, they got a game against the Lions up next, man. So they might overlook an out-of-conference game against the Steelers here, man, between a divisional foe beating the Giants, in primetime, and then a couple of big NFC matchups coming up against the Lions and the 49ers, a couple of the best teams in the NFC coming up next. I think it is possible that Dallas overlooks the Steelers, even though it is a Sunday night game. And it is going to be a second straight road game for them. So I don't know if Dallas stayed out in the Eastern time zone for this or if they're coming back out to the Eastern time zone. But either way, I don't think playing 2 straight games on the road is really that easy, and they're having to go into the Steelers, man, into Pittsburgh, into Heinz Field, where Pittsburgh's coming off their first loss of the season, and they were a 3-0, although they were an ugly 3-0, and I think I mentioned last week, maybe I mentioned it on the Sunday morning show last week, I kind of added some analysis in that Colts game. I actually liked the Colts in that game last week. Didn't expect Anthony Richardson to go down in that game, but he did. He got hurt. So Joe Flacco, he is on the Colts now. He came in and he actually did well for the Colts, and they wound up winning the game against the Steelers. Dealing the Steelers their first loss. Yeah, I thought the Steelers were overvalued, having won those first 3 games. But their defense has been impressive, man. Even though they had their worst defensive showing against the Colts, their defense has still been playing pretty well overall this season, man. You're looking at a better defense out of the Steelers than you get out of the Cowboys. The Cowboys' defense has looked very vulnerable so far this year, so I think Pittsburgh's kind of in a bounce-back spot after a loss to the Colts. They're going to be hosting Dallas in primetime, man. I think the game might be a little bit of a bigger game for the Steelers because they get to host that game. They don't host the Cowboys in primetime very often, even though the Steelers, of course, they're a team that's used to playing in primetime, but still, this is actually kind of a bigger game for the Steelers than the games that surround it because the Colts, I mean, they're just kind of mediocre, and the Raiders up next. I don't think Pittsburgh cares about that very much at all. So I like the Steelers in that Sunday night matchup there as far as the side is concerned. Justin Fields going to have a big rushing day. Yeah, he might have a field day against this bad defense there. Old crab legs. Yeah, which guy's old crab legs? I don't even know. That's right. I forgot. Micah Parsons is hurt. Lawrence is hurt. Yeah, Brandon Cooks. I forgot to mention. Brandon Cooks was just up on my screen there. But yeah, I was gonna mention Brandon Cooks is hurt. But Cooks, I mean, he hasn't been cooking really this year. Like, I don't think Cooks being hurt really matters that much for Dallas's offense. They haven't been using him that much, really. They have guys that have been able to fill in fine for him. They have a lot of wide receiver weapons on that Dallas team. So I don't think Cooks being injured really matters that much. But those other injuries do matter, man. Tank Lawrence and then Micah Parsons being hurt, that's a pretty big blow, man. But you're right. Parsons got hurt towards the end of their game last week, I believe. So Parsons, is hurt. I think he got hurt towards the end of the Giants game there. Yeah, so that's a big blow to Dallas's defense. So Dallas's defense wasn't even playing that well anyway, but with those guys out, you're right. Dallas's defense is going to suffer a little bit. So I don't know if that injury situation has really affected the line that much, because those individual guys being injured are probably not going to affect the line that much. Even Parsons, I don't think affects the line that much, even though he's probably their best player on defense, their best individual player there. So maybe him being out might affect the line half point or so. I mean, that would be a lot for a defensive lineman to affect a line like that. But whatever the case may be, Winston is crab legs from his time at Florida State. Yeah, I bet Florida State wishes they had him back right now instead of DJ Uiagalelei. I didn't see what Florida State did today, though. I saw they were losing to Clemson earlier in the game, and I just didn't pay attention. I don't know what's going on in my game over here with Miami, but I'm hoping that Miami is going to get me a money line cash or at least cover when they were up by 11, covering by like 22 points the last I saw when I went to start this video. So I haven't been distracted at all, man. So yay me. I haven't looked. Last night I was kind of looking at the UNLV game, but that was because of you guys, man. That was because of Nate. He had the play on UNLV there. But yeah, lean to the Steelers in that one. And then Monday night, interesting matchup, Saints-Chiefs. I mean, this is one of those ones where I think the public is going to perceive that this is going to be an offensive game as well, because it's the Saints. I mean, at least for the first 2 weeks, they looked like their offense was unstoppable. And the Chiefs, I mean, it is Patrick Mahomes. We've seen the Chiefs turn into a more defensive-oriented team, man, over the last couple of years. The Chiefs' offense has not been as good. Mahomes is going to be down a lot of his weapons now in this game, man. I mean, Rashee Rice is hurt. Isaiah Pacheco is hurt. They're down a lot of their guys, man. So I don't even know who's their starting running back now. I don't even know. Samaje Perine. I mean, I have no idea who they're starting at running back. And then all their wide receivers are down. So now I think Xavier Worthy is going to be their number one wide receiver now, and he's still on my fantasy bench, by the way, Worthy. I don't think I can play him, and I think it's too much of a risk. He's too boomer bust. Oh, yeah, that's right, Kareem Hunt. I think they just signed him. Kareem Hunt, isn't he like, he's a woman abuser? I mean, I'm not really narrowing it down. I think if I just pick any like NFL running back, there's probably a decent chance that applies to them, and I think he is one. So he's back, I guess, on the Chiefs after a stint with the Cleveland Browns. So he was on the Chiefs before he was on Cleveland, right? And now he's back with the Chiefs. I don't know. So I guess he's gonna start, but he can probably still play, I guess. I don't know. We'll have to see. But Chiefs, yeah, just a bunch of offensive injuries, but I'm not sure it's really even gonna matter, man, because their offense just kind of runs all through Mahomes, and it hasn't really seemed to matter like who he surrounds himself with. The Chiefs are basically the New England Patriots from that stretch where there was a long stretch where the Patriots didn't really have a whole lot of offensive weapons, but it was still Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and they were still just winning every game by like one score, basically. That's what the Chiefs are right now. It's Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. They get the benefit of like all the reffing calls, and they win every game basically by the skin of their teeth, just like the Patriots are doing for many years there. So I think the Chiefs are that. The Chiefs are down in this game from 6.5 to 5.5 with juice on the 5.5. 61% of the tickets are on the Saints, though. So the public is coming in and taking the Saints plus the points here. This might be a game where, man, just because the Chiefs' offense has not been that impressive and because of all those injuries, maybe the public is siding with taking the points there because maybe they perceive that the Saints are actually even the higher scoring team out of the two of them and want to take the points there. I don't know. Looks like it's turning into a pros versus Joes. I don't know if you ever see a pros versus Joes where the Joes are on the underdog and it's a Monday night game. The Joes are almost always on the favorite in Monday night, man. And they're on the underdog Saints, it looks like right now. And 85% of the cash looks like it's on Kansas City. That's just wild to me. So, market read, I'm going to lean to the Chiefs in this one just because that is the case. I mean, the market's indicating on it as much as I don't want to lay. I'm not going to play it. I mean, I don't want to lay points with the Chiefs. The Chiefs have won, 2 games by 7 points, and they've won their other 2 games by fewer than 7. So they're winning every game barely by 1 score. But the Saints, I mean, I'm not sure that I don't know how good their defense really is, to be honest, man. I mean, there have been some games where it's like, yeah, the Saints actually have a pretty decent defense. There are other times where I'm like, no, it doesn't look like they do. So I don't really know what to expect out of the Saints here, to be honest. The Saints, I mean, they're coming off of 2 straight losses after they started the season with 2 insane offensive performances. They're going to be without Taysom Hill, their tight end / quarterback hybrid player there. I don't know if that matters that much. I mean, they do use him on gimmick plays, basically, to try to throw the defense off. But he's had a couple of games where he's made an impact, but I don't know if it's really going to matter that much. But Saints are coming off 2 losses in a row against the Eagles and the Falcons. But those are both 2 pretty big, tough games, man. That were close games against a couple of pretty good teams there. I mean, the Eagles are one of the better teams in the conference, and the Falcons are one of their division foes there. And the Falcons are actually at the top of the division now. So after New Orleans was leading the division, Atlanta has now taken over, and that's who they lost to in their last game. They lost to the Falcons right at the very end. I think kicked a field goal right near the end there, if I remember correctly, to beat the Saints there. So the Saints are coming off that, and this is a second straight road game for the Saints. So I actually think the spot is actually a little bit worse for the Saints here. Even though it is a Monday night game and you're going to Arrowhead, it's a pretty big game, but still, second straight road game. I mean, I think the Saints might eventually not really have that much left in the tank by the end of this, whereas Kansas City, I mean, I know they have the better record, but the public is actually on the 2-2 team against the 4-0 team. How wild is that? That the public's on the team who's 2 games worse in the standings, and it's only 4 games in, so they're playing on the team that has half of the wins that the other team has. That's wild to me. And the Chiefs, they're coming off, I mean, they were able to beat the Falcons, so it's kind of a little bit surprising me, I guess, that the public isn't coming in on the Chiefs a little bit more just because they see that. Well, wait a minute. The Chiefs beat the Falcons, and the Falcons beat the Saints, so of course the Chiefs are going to beat the Saints, right? Public seems to not be thinking that way in this game. And the Chiefs coming off a game which was a difficult spot for them. It was a second straight road game, having to go out to the Pacific Coast and play the Chargers, and I think the Chargers had a 10-0 lead in that game. And the Chiefs still came back and won the game, which I think the Chiefs maybe consider that to be a bit of a scare because they were like a 7-point road favorite there. So they almost lost as a 7-point favorite. So I think maybe that'll focus the Chiefs a little bit more coming into this game. So schedule situation-wise, I actually think the Chiefs are in the slightly better spot there, but it's kind of tough to gauge. I mean, I might have a tendency to lean more to an under in this one just because, like I said, these 2 teams are kind of perceived to be teams that can score because the Saints did that in the first 2 weeks, and the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, but the total is down from 45.5 to 43, but maybe the total is reacting a little bit to all the Chiefs' offensive injuries, so I don't know. It's still a little bit tough to do that, but that is a low total, man. It almost seems too easy to come in and go over on that on a Monday night. 65% of the tickets on the over, but 78% of the cash on the over, even though it's dropped a bit. But like I said, the reason it's dropped a little bit may be because of the offensive injuries the Chiefs have there. So I don't know for sure, but I mean, those Monday night games, I always have a tendency to look towards the under first, although I rarely ever play totals in the NFL anyway. I pretty much only do it in baseball, really. But that's just the way I look at that game there. The over usually is just way too public pretty much on Mondays on primetime games, so I tend to not like them. Kareem Hunt looked good last week. I didn't see really any of that game, so I don't know. All right. My other 2 plays. Let's get to the other 2 plays before I get out of here, man. We're looking ugly on all 3 of these, man. Maybe this one's a little bit more palatable, although they haven't looked good so far this year. Cincinnati Bengals plus 2.5, and I was seeing 2.5 at even money out there. So I was thinking, is this going to hit 3? Are we going to be able to get 3 on Cincinnati? I don't know that we're actually going to be able to get the 3, because in the market here, it looks like it's actually kind of headed in the other direction, with the Baltimore Ravens dropping from 2 to 1 with heavy juice, which is really kind of like 1.5. I don't know why pregame here is saying that the consensus is 1 with heavy juice, because like there's almost no difference between that and 1.5. So I don't know what book is heavily juicing a 1, but whatever. 61% of the tickets and only 56% of the cash on the Baltimore side. So Baltimore, they're getting the public action, man. They're a public road favorite in this one. It looks like less of the cash is on them. It looks like the line is kind of moving against them. I think this is kind of a difficult spot for Baltimore, man. So I'm fading Baltimore in this one. I think we're at a point where Cincinnati's being undervalued because of their awful 0-3 start. They did not look good going 0-3. And yeah, their defense has not been good. I'm aware of it. Hopefully their defense will maybe step it up in this game and improve a little bit, because I am a little bit concerned about that Bengals defense. But this is more of a spot play than anything else. This is a scheduling spot, scheduling dynamic, situational play. I mean, basically all of my plays are. So I'm going to be playing on some bad teams that don't play good defense. It's just the way that it is. I forget what else I was going to say. I think we're at the point where, like, I mean, think about what would this line have been? I mean, we probably can go and find like what the look ahead was like before the season started. What do you think the line was in this game? Ravens at Bengals in week 5 before the season started. The Bengals were probably a small favorite in this game, I would imagine, even though we know the Ravens are probably the better team. We're probably looking at Bengals maybe minus a point or 2 in this game, and now we're looking at the Ravens being a favorite. So maybe it's not really a huge move and a huge overreaction, but I think we can only be possibly getting value on the Bengals here, the way that these teams have played so far this year. Baltimore, I mean, I know they suffered a loss to the Raiders, but that was a sandwich spot. I know the public doesn't really think in those terms. So the public is probably just going to kind of ignore that anyway, even though from my perspective, it actually makes Baltimore look better than they looked in that game, because I know that was a bad spot between the Chiefs and the Cowboys there. But I think the public is just going to give Baltimore a pass for losing to the Raiders, because their other games, they lost to the Chiefs, which we know that's not an easy game to play at Arrowhead. And then they beat the Cowboys and they crushed the Bills. So the public is going to be coming in on the Ravens, man, especially because the public is recency bias. So they're going to be looking at those last 2 games and thinking, oh, man, Baltimore went into Dallas and beat Dallas. And now what we just saw on last Sunday night on a primetime game, man, they saw Baltimore crush the Bills. So I think it tends to be a good spot when you can find a team that looked way, way, way too good in primetime, and a lot of eyes were on that game. A lot of people were watching it. Even though, I don't know, does NBC still carry the Sunday night games, or is it all on Peacock now? I don't even know, because I put it on like sometimes to watch the end. I guess it's on both. So, yeah, so probably still a lot of people are watching that game, because you can still watch it even if you don't have Peacock. It's still on NBC, so it was still a game with a lot of eyes on it, man. So, I mean, that's a game where when a team looks that good in a primetime game, I think they can only go one way, and that is to regress a little bit from that game. I mean, you're never as good as what you look in your best game. You're never as bad as what you look in your worst game. So that was like Baltimore's best game, basically. They crushed the Buffalo Bills, man. I mean, that was in prime time. Ton of eyes on the game. Baltimore looked great. I think they can only go one way from that, like I said, and maybe regress a little bit. And it was not a misleading result, though, either. They crushed Buffalo in that game, but still, now they're coming off that game, and they have to go on the road to Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, I mean, I think Cincinnati's going to be really hungry for a win, man. Whereas Baltimore, they might be feeling a little bit high on themselves, man. They might be feeling a little bit overconfident after those 2 big wins and the way that they beat the Bills. Bills, a potential playoff opponent that they might have later this year. Potential playoff preview there. I think they're looking at the Bengals and thinking the Bengals just have sucked this season, man. I think they're just going to be riding high off of that Bills game and maybe taking the Bengals a little bit too lightly in this game. I think that may be what we're looking at here with the Cincinnati side here. Cincinnati, as I said, they've looked pretty bad, but I think we can kind of explain at least a couple of these games here. They lost to the New England Patriots in the first week as a big favorite, but thinking about that game, man, it was Joe Burrow's return from injury. I mean, he was injured for a lot of the later portion of last season. He came back this season. Yeah, I think he played a bit in preseason, but this was his first regular season game. And it was that on top of like the Bengals had like some kind of chaos going on during preseason. Jamar Chase was holding out, which I think was kind of unexpected because I think he still had like a couple of years left on his contract, if I remember correctly, but he was holding out for some bizarre reason anyway. So there were a lot of weird factors and kind of a lot of chaos surrounding Cincinnati coming into that one. So they just didn't do well, and I think you can kind of attribute some of that to the chaos there. Then they lost, and they played much better in this game against the Chiefs, and they lost, I think, at the very end on a Butker field goal. So Cincinnati was like seconds away from beating the Chiefs on the road in Arrowhead. So it looked like Cincinnati was pretty much returning to form in that one. But then they dropped the next game on Monday night to the Commanders, the Redskins. Cincinnati, I mean, I think maybe they were just kind of in a hangover spot after that big game against the Chiefs. So maybe that Washington spot was a bad spot as well. And maybe with a rookie quarterback, maybe they took Washington a little bit lightly as well. So I think you can maybe kind of explain those games a little bit. And I think at the very least, Cincinnati is not as bad as they looked in those first three games. And I think it's good that they finally got a win last week, but the public is not going to put any stock into that, man. Oh, Cincinnati beat Carolina. Okay. But even though, yeah, it was Carolina with Andy Dalton, though, man. Former Cincinnati Bengal. Andy Dalton was in there. So the Panthers did put up a decent offensive showing in that game, but Cincinnati also did. And Cincinnati, I mean, the public's not going to put that much stock into it, but I think that that game is actually better than it looks because what it will do is it will break Cincinnati's loss streak. When you start the season 0-3, man, I think you might tend to start feeling a little bit down on yourselves. Like, you know that the odds are against you as far as even making the playoffs at that point just because you're 0-3. Like, not many 0-3 teams make the playoffs. So I think the fact that they won, finally they won a game, I think that's going to start some new momentum because that, like, takes you out of that, like, losing mindset. We finally won a game. We know we can win a game here. Now let's focus on, like, this next game here. So I think that actually helps. So I think that's going to help Cincinnati be in, like, the right amount of confidence, whereas I think the Ravens are going to come into this game overconfident, if that makes sense. And it's a home game for Cincinnati, and they know they're behind Baltimore in the standings here. They know how good Baltimore looked last week. So I think Cincinnati is going to throw everything they got at them, and you're getting them as a home underdog here. And that is the play in that one, man. So that's us. Cincinnati Bengals plus 2.5 in that one. And then we'll wrap it up with my favorite play of the week. The first game that I was looking at, and I waited to play this one because I was thinking there might be 7s cropping up in this one. I was looking, seeing 6.5s with a lot of juice there, and I'm thinking the public's coming in on the Seattle side. I'm going to be taking the New York Giants, and I finally saw the 7 come up, and I grabbed it. I'm taking the New York Giants plus 7. If it hits 7.5, yeah, I mean, I missed the 7.5. It looks like it might actually go to 7.5. Maybe I'll be a little bit angry if it does, but I mean, plus 7 or 7.5. Yeah, I mean, you'd prefer to have the hook in case it does land 7, but either way, I like the Giants plus the points here. I think this line's getting a little bit too out of control on the Seahawks, and this is one hell of a sandwich spot, man. I'll explain it in a minute, but this is not something that you see like almost ever. Like, I saw this spot and I was like, are you kidding me? I don't think I've seen a scheduling spot like this, like, hardly ever. The schedule makers are really being unkind to the Seattle Seahawks in this one, man. So this line has gone up from 6 to 7 through the 7. It looks like maybe it'll hit 7.5. I don't know. Seahawks are very public with 86% of the tickets. It looks like 88% of the cash on them right now. I'm not sure if I totally buy that, or if we think that maybe like some professional bettors actually want the Giants, but what they'll do is maybe they're coming in and seeing, hey, this number's close to 7. So what we want to do is we want to actually make false moves on the Seahawks because they know that because they're respected bettors, they come in on the Seahawks side, the books will have to move the number a little bit further, and those professional bettors are going to be looking, give me that 7, give me that 7.5, and then they'll actually come in even bigger on the Giants side. So it could be one of those situations where it's a setup. I don't know, but I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think that the cash percentage being a little bit on the Seahawks there is legitimate. I don't think that that's actually the case. The way that my situational handicapping works on this one, I don't see how it could be. But, I mean, I could be wrong about that. Even if I am wrong about that, I still really like the Giants side here. It's my favorite NFL play of the week. Seattle, they're in I don't know if I've ever seen a spot this bad, man. I saw this and I was like, holy crap, you got to be kidding me. Seattle started off the season 3-0, and I talked about how the 3-0 was a little bit misleading, man, because, I mean, if you look at the wins, they aren't really as good as they looked. They beat rookie Bo Nix in his first game at home, so Seattle was expected to win that game. Not totally impressive. They went out on the road and they beat the Patriots, and it took basically to the wire for them to beat a pretty bad New England Patriots team. Also not totally impressive. Then they came back home and they beat a Tua-less Miami Dolphins team who has not done anything right. And that's a Miami team that followed that game up by losing horribly again to the Tennessee Titans. So not very impressive for Seattle there either. So really they don't have any impressive wins yet this season. And then they played pretty well in that last game against Detroit, but they ran into a good Detroit team in prime time on, Sunday night, I believe. They went into Detroit, and Seattle lost the game on Sunday night. But as far as the public perception is concerned, that could not have looked any better for Seattle as far as how good you can possibly look in a loss. Like, as far as a loss is concerned, you could not have possibly looked better while still losing the game. Seattle put up 29 points in that game. They were scoring. They were passing the ball all over the place. It was a high-scoring game. Everybody knows Detroit is good. And Seattle put up 516 yards of offense. So they actually outgained Detroit in that game. They turned the ball over twice. They had a ton of first downs. Although Detroit actually, they had so many quick scores in that game that they actually just didn't possess the ball that much, and they didn't have a lot of first downs. They had very few plays in the game, which is crazy. But one other thing you take away from that is that Seattle's defense really did not do well in this game. I mean, Jared Goff was 18 for 18 off of them. He was 100% completion percentage and caught a touchdown pass in the game. I mean, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown threw a pass to Jared Goff, and Jared Goff threw a pass to him, both for touchdowns over the course of the game. Just crazy stuff. But Seattle, I mean, they put up such a good offensive performance in that game that the public is going to think that that's a good-looking loss for Seattle, right? Like, they went into Detroit. Detroit's really good. Difficult game. They played very competitively in the game. They looked good, man. And now they're coming off of that, and they're playing the lowly New York Giants. It looks almost too easy to play the Seahawks, especially when the line was under a touchdown. The books brought it out at 6, which that's also an indicator to me that the books, they throw up a 6 as the opening line there. They know the public's going to be laying the 6, man. They know the public's going to come in thinking, oh, my God, I got Seattle against these awful New York Giants, against this awful New York Giants team at under a touchdown. Yeah, I think the public's going to only go one way on that and play the Seattle Seahawks at under a touchdown there, whereas I think it looks too easy to take the Seahawks, and they throw up a number like that, and it's, I think, almost like the books are begging you to play the Seahawks in that one. Seahawks, from my perspective, they're coming off a battle on Sunday night, man. So that was a primetime game on Sunday night against the Detroit Lions. Big-time game, man. That was Sunday, right? I'm not getting that wrong. I think it was, right? No, it was Monday. Holy crap. It's even worse. No wonder why I was saying holy crap on this game. My apologies. That was Monday night. That's right, because I remember I made fun of it. It was a double header on Monday night. It was this game and the Miami-Tennessee game, and I was like, nobody's going to watch Miami-Tennessee. The Seattle-Detroit game is so much better, and it was. It lived up to the hype, so this is even worse. No wonder why I was saying holy crap when I saw this. So Seattle played a Monday night. They played a huge game in primetime against the Detroit Lions. Suffered their first loss, which, again, when you suffer a first loss in general in a big game like that, it can kind of hang you over into the next game. But that was on prime time on the road, and now they're having to go back to Seattle on a short week, play the awful New York Giants, and then who does Seattle have up next? The San Francisco 49ers, one of the best teams in the NFC still, the NFC champions from last year, and they're one of their biggest competitors to win this division, probably their biggest competition to win the division this year. Not only do they have the 49ers up next, so not only is that a huge look ahead, and that makes it a huge sandwich spot between the Lions and the 49ers, the 49ers game is a primetime game, and it's Thursday night, so they have to play the 49ers 4 days later after this Giants game on Sunday. They have to play the 49ers on Thursday, so they have almost no time to prepare for the 49ers, and they have to play the 49ers almost immediately. I don't know if I've ever seen a spot like this. Seattle is playing 3 games in 11 days. That is insane. 3 NFL games in 11 days, 2 of them in prime time against 2 of the class teams of the NFC. And in the middle there, they play a game against the Giants. I mean, do you think they're going to be focused on the Giants at all here? I looked at this spot and I was like, this is unbelievable, dude. This is insane. Give me the Giants. This is so crazy, dude. The Seahawks, yeah, like I said, I mean, they put in a huge effort against the Lions there, too, so they might be a little bit burned out as well, and that having been their first loss. I mean, what else can you say about this? I don't think I've ever seen a spot this bad, maybe in any sport ever. And now that I'm hyping it up so much and I'm saying all this, I'm going to lose the play. The Giants will lose by 21 points. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but, I mean, my situational handicapping, this is like a must play on the New York Giants. And getting 7, maybe you'll even get 7.5 on the Giants. Got to do it. In Seattle, because they have to prepare for the 49ers, and they're going to see that as a much, much bigger game in 4 days, I think they're maybe going to already be looking to that and maybe already be preparing something for the 49ers, man. So they might completely look past the Giants, who have looked awful so far this season. They only have 1 win, and it's against the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, that's just great. So you're probably getting value on the Giants because of that, because they've looked so bad. But the Giants, I mean, they were competitive in these last 3 games after they got blown out by the Vikings. The Vikings have looked really good so far. I mean, the Vikings did the same thing basically to the Houston Texans. So is that really even that bad that the Giants got killed by the Vikings? Maybe not. And then they played Washington close, and Washington has started looking pretty good. They beat the Cleveland Browns in a second straight road game, and then they lost to Dallas and played them pretty competitively too. So the Giants maybe aren't actually as bad as they look. Like, people are making fun of the Giants, making fun of Daniel Jones, like this is the worst team in football, but I'm not sure that it is. And I was saying maybe the Giants' defense isn't that good, but I don't know that it's that bad, man. I mean, they held Washington to 21. They held the Browns to 15, but the Browns' offense sucks. And they held Dallas, who has a pretty potent offense, to 20. So the Giants, they're staying competitive in these games, man. They're not that bad. So you throw out that Vikings loss there. Since that Vikings loss, they haven't had any losses by more than 5 points. And you're asking them to cover as a 7-point underdog here. So that looks good to me. They have not lost by that margin since the opening week of the season. So people are perceiving the Giants to still be one of the worst teams in football. But, I mean, they're certainly not good, but I think they're at least better than, your Carolina Panthers and teams like that. So I like the Giants, and I like the spot here. And if you want to just add more to the situation as far as how not good it is for the Seahawks, or in this case, maybe making it a little bit better for the Giants, because, yes, I know the Giants are coming off what you could see as a big divisional game against the Cowboys, okay, but that was on Thursday night, man, so the Giants actually have extra rest. They played on Thursday, and the Seahawks played on Monday. So the Giants have extra rest, the Seahawks have less rest, and the Seahawks have to play the 49ers on Thursday. That's just crazy, dude. So major sandwich spot for the Seahawks with very little rest in there at all on both sides of it. It's basically a primetime sandwich. It's a prime rib sandwich. Yeah, let's call it that the Seahawks are in there. It's a prime sandwich, baby. That is just crazy. And it's almost like a shortened sandwich because they have shortened weeks on both sides. So it's a short stack prime rib sandwich. I've never seen anything like it. And the Giants have extra rest. Give it to me. Give me the Giants. I don't think I have to say anything else. I think I reiterated myself too much on that. I said too much. New York Giants, man. That's going to do it for me. Those are my plays. I went over the primetime games. Short card here. I went a little bit over an hour on this one. I'm giving you more information, man. I'm going longer on every one of these videos. New York Jets plus 2.5 in this London game. It's going to be starting in several hours at this point. Got to wake up before that happens. Cincinnati Bengals plus 2.5 and New York Giants plus 7. Those are my 3 plays. 3 underdogs. I like them all. We're fading the recency bias, the public sentiment. We're fading teams that looked way too good recently. Let's do it. Double-decker. Yeah, it's a double-decker short stack prime rib sandwich, baby. Thanks, guys, for hanging out in the chat. Thanks, Nate, or whoever else was in here. Rootless. Thanks for all of you for hanging out, man. That's going to do it for me. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Of course, as always, follow me on Twitter. Go check out the Tower Gang Podcast, the most hilarious, offensive comedy podcast ever. Way more offensive than Legion of Skanks. I almost said Thursday. Oh, man, that would have been a mistake. Every Wednesday at 9:11 p.m. Tower Gang, Wednesday nights, motherfuckers. It's Tower Gang Wednesday, 9:11 p.m. every Wednesday. Go sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/TowerGang. You get bonus content, live pre-shows, live post-shows. You get to hang out with us in a Telegram. I've been in there a little bit today, actually, trying to get a little bit more activity in there. We are in the midst of Cocktober also on Tower Gang, where we rate our fans' dicks, and unfortunately, I am the one who receives the dick pics, and then I do send them to the rest of Tower Gang in we have a chat where just all the hosts are in there, so all the hosts are going to see it, but nobody else. We keep it private. We keep it amongst just the hosts, just the boys, and we rate them on the show. If you didn't see how we were doing that last year, we've done one so far this year, and it was on one of the post shows. It was actually the post show, the last September episode. I think we did it. We have not done one in October yet, or it might have been the second to last episode of September. I don't remember, but we do have another entry that we're going to have to talk about this week. So that's going on. Unfortunately, I'm getting dick pics from people. We're doing it. We're going to rate them, but we rate them by describing them to you because we can't show them publicly, man. We're not going to betray our listeners' trust there, and we're not going to get ourselves banned, but we describe them in great detail, and we rate them on the show. So that's what is going on there on Tower Gang. When is Tower Gang versus Legion of Skanks basketball game? We would get crushed in that game, dude, even though we have 5 guys and they only have 3. You realize that the average height of Tower Gang is like 5'8", basically, and that includes Clint in there. Clint is above 6 feet, and all the rest of us are like basically 5'9" or shorter. That's what's going on there. Whereas Legion of Skanks, I think all 3 of them are taller than that, right? Like, I know Dave is really tall. Dave's 6'3", 6'4", whatever it is. He's very tall. Maybe he's not very athletic, though, so maybe that'll help us, because I think Jose and Cole are at least more athletic, but they're strong, but maybe they don't know how to shoot and, like, play the game of basketball, so I don't know. But they might be able to just box out a bit, though, and Big J is probably slow because he's fat, but he is way taller than us. And Lewis, I mean, he's an MMA fighter, so you know he's physical. He's probably the most athletic out of any of us on both sides, and he's pretty tall as well, right? I've met him before. I think he's above 6 feet as well. He's not good at basketball. Oh, he's rough, like he's physical. Yeah, I would not want to have to face him, man. We'd have to put one of our more physical players on. I think it would not go well for us, though. We just have way too much of a height disadvantage. Even though we might be able to tire out Dave and Jay because they're probably unathletic. I mean, I'm not athletic either. Maybe I could actually beat Big J in a stamina contest, man. I don't know. I didn't see the game. Oh, so you did mean Lewis is not good at basketball. He can barely dribble. I could see that, man. I mean, I don't know. He's Puerto Rican, so I don't know. Maybe that means his hands are greasy, but so is Top Lobster. I forgot. Top Lobster is actually very athletic as well. He played baseball professionally, so what am I saying? Top Lobster is pretty athletic, although he is not very tall, but he is an athlete. He's in pretty decent shape. And Cole and Jose obviously are also in good shape, but again, they're more about like building muscle than anything else. That's going to do it for me, man. And also follow Flapper, flapper.net, FLAPPR.net. They are a smut blog, although they claim that they are not a smut blog. They talk about women, sports. They incorporate humor into everything. They talk about history. They talk about politics, everything you can imagine. And I'm going to be helping them out with their Mommy Milkers of the Year award that I think is going to be awarded at the end of the year. We got a bunch of categories going on there. We got some female political figures that are going to be in there again. The reigning champ is actually one of those. Lauren Boebert won it last year. She's back in it again. She won it last year for her Beetlejuice antics, I think. And she's going to be back in the running again as the reigning champ, trying to defend her reigning a championship there. And going to be a lot of women in that are going to get rated, and I'm coming up with like the betting odds on that, so it'll be a lot of fun. That's going to do it for me, man. Again, thanks for hanging out. Long stream again here. Let's get some sleep and wake up and watch this awful Jets game and hope that they make me money. I mean, oh, God. All right, man. Stupid London games. I hate it, man, because it means I have to wake up and actually make sure that my picks are in place and that my fantasy football lineups are set. I don't think my fantasy team has anybody in that game, but whatever. Thanks, Nate, again. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Peace out.